Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the public meeting this Monday, the 4th of July. Can I have a mover and a seconder to call the meeting to order? Moved by Deputy Mayor Jaworski, second by Councillor McDonnell. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or amendments, Ms. Haley?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, moving on to item 3. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll go right into new business. Proposed zoning amendment, long-term care facility. Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to start off with a brief introduction and then turn the presentation over to the developer. So thank you everyone for attending our public meeting this evening. For members of the public that are participating by Zoom or by phone, you will be permitted to speak to the respective application following our presentation. And prior to speaking, we do request that you state your name and address for the record. If you wish to make a comment, please use the raise hand function and the chair will call upon you. And for those of you that are participating by phone, if you wish to speak to a particular application, you will be provided that opportunity following the presentation. I am now going to read required wording under the Ontario Planning Act. This is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Ontario Planning Act. Any person may attend the public meeting and or make written or verbal representation either in support of or in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Township of South Glengarry before the bylaw is decided upon, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the Township of South Glengarry to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Township of South Glengarry before the bylaw is decided upon, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless there are reasonable grounds to do so. So this zoning amendment is known as the Long-Term Care Home Zoning Bylaw Amendment. The proposed location is legally described as part of Lot D, Registered Plan 26 in the geographic village of Lancaster, and now in the Township of South Glengarry. And this is a key map of, or location map of the subject property. So just to help orient everyone, this would be the railway tracks that would run east-west through the village. And the site is just north of the railway tracks and on the south side of Smithfield Park. So the purpose of the zoning amendment is to rezone the subject property from residential 2, low density, to institutional exception 2. And the reason for the exception is to permit a maximum building height of 14 meters to accommodate the proposed long-term care facility. All other applicable provisions of the bylaw is expected to be respected. At this time, I would like to introduce Ben Villani from Arch Corporation. I'll turn the presentation over to him. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and that will allow them to complete their presentation. And then it'll come back to me to finish the presentation. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Haley, Mayor, Council. Appreciate everyone's time today. I'll introduce myself. I'm Ben Villani with Arch Corporation. I'm Vice President of Development. We have a small little army with us today. We have David McKay from MHBC Planning, they're our planning consultant, as well as we have Neil Regani from Group Marchand Architecture, who's also on the line. But David and myself will be doing the presentation and taking questions. Okay, so can I just jump right into it, Ms. Haley? Or yeah.
And would you like me to share my screen with the presentation material for you?
Yes, that'd be great if you could.
Okay, let me know when you can see the screen.
Great. Yep, I can see it. Okay, so good afternoon, good evening, everyone, I should say, sorry. So what I want to start with is just an introduction to Arch and Riverdale Living. So Arch is the development arm of the wholly owned subsidiary Riverdale Living. Riverdale Living owns and manages several senior care communities across Ontario, including the Lancaster Long-Term Care Residence, which is located at 105 Military Road. The home has reached its end of useful life and no longer meets current standards set by the Ministry of Long-Term Care. As well, our home operating license is actually set to expire mid-2025. So our goal is to remain in the community. We want to continue providing urgently needed long-term care services to the community and the surrounding catchment area. So we've applied to the Ministry of Long-Term Care to construct a new, larger, state-of-the-art facility on a recently severed parcel of land that's located at the northern extent of Broad Street and Wood Street on that key map, as Ms. Haley had shown. Earlier this year, we were fortunate to receive a bed allocation from the Ministry of Long-Term Care to proceed with the project. This allows us to move forward with the design of the 128-bed facility and subsequent zoning bylaw amendment application, for which we're here to discuss today. On that note, I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to David, who's going to speak to some of the planning aspects, and then I'll pick back up on the building design.
Great, thanks very much, Ben. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public watching. My name is David Mackay. I'm a registered professional planner with MHBC, and I've been retained to assist with this project. So the project, as Ben had mentioned, is to develop the property, and here are some conceptual renderings for the lands just north of Broad and Wood Street. They would be for a long-term care facility, which would incorporate approximately 85,000 square feet of building design on lands that are currently designated and intended for development, for urban development. As you can see by the landscape plan that we've provided here, there would be the two axes, as I'd mentioned, parking, a large landscaped area along the edge where the residential community sits, a parking area, and then the long-term care building in a generally H-shaped site design with landscaped areas both on the north and south sides of the building for the residents. There would be 128 beds located within the facility, and those would be divided up into different resident home areas as required by the ministry for the servicing of those residents. So overall, from a planning perspective, the development is permitted in terms of the urban designation and the residential designation that has been applied to the site. We are rezoning it to allow for the specific institutional use of a long-term care facility and to allow for that slight increase in height from 12 meters to 14 meters. From our perspective as registered professional planners, the proposal is in keeping with the provincial policy as well as the official plan. And subject to any detailed discussions, we'd request approval by council of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Thanks, and I'll pass it over to Ben at this point in time.
Thanks, David. So lastly, we just want to wrap up with some points on some of our sustainable initiatives. So both Arch and Riverdale Living, we have a long-term view on the management and sustainability of all of our assets. We're an advocate of a carbon neutral future, and we're committed to reducing the impact all of our developments have on the environment. And that's through the utilization of renewable clean energy technologies where feasible. For all of our projects, we engage an energy consultant that works closely with our engineering teams to analyze the feasibility of implementing some of these strategies. And we've been quite successful in a number of our homes to implement a ground source heat pump system that's supplemented with a solar photovoltaic system. And what that does is the ground source heat pump, or also known as geothermal, it uses the ground uses the ground for the exchange of heating and cooling depending on the season, and it offsets our natural gas usage. These solar photovoltaics are really there just to give us some extra energy, electricity boost, because we do use more electricity with the geothermal system. But it also helps in adding some electrical to our base load requirements. So for this site, we are quite early in the design process, but our plan is to follow a similar strategy. There is some ground testing that we need to do to make sure that it's going to be feasible, but that would be our intent at this site. Okay. So some closing comments. I'd just like to thank the mayor and council members and all those in attendance for the opportunity to speak about our proposed long-term care development project. We're happy to answer any questions you may have and appreciate everyone's time. So thank you.
Great, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your presentation. I can say confidently that this council is very excited about this project, and I think it's going to be a humongous, a really good addition to our community. It's going to allow a lot of our senior residents to be able to live closer. Right now, there's a huge shortage of beds, and we're very thankful that you're choosing to develop in our community. And I will add that I am happy to hear of your efforts on the sustainability side. I think credit to you guys for that. So I'll open if you could stop sharing your screen. I'd like a full, if someone could.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, there was just a couple more points that I wanted to make just to wrap up the public presentation portion of it. And then I'll definitely close my screen. So as you're aware, when we receive a zoning bylaw amendment, we're obligated to notify all abutting property owners within 120 meters and applicable agencies. And just to note that to date, we have not received any written or oral comments at all from the public so far. As everyone probably realized, the zoning amendment application is subject to a decision of council, and it is our goal to bring a report to either our July 18th or our August 2nd council meeting. And for members of the public who are watching, if they could do their best to submit all their comments to us by July 8th, which is this Friday, to allow us to incorporate it into the report. However, we will continue accepting comments as necessary. So I will now stop sharing my screen, and thank you.
Perfect.
There we go.
Thank you. I just wanted to add one more thing. I wanted to thank you, Ms. Haley, for going above and beyond. We hosted a public meeting just for information purposes, and staff circulated all the neighbors. There was a little bit of buzz, small town, what's going on. So I want to commend Ms. Haley for going above and beyond. 2 people showed up. So, but it was good that I appreciate your efforts. I've talked to a lot of people about this project, and I haven't heard any negative comments. So we're looking forward to it. I'm sorry, I'm doing all the talking. Are there any questions or comments of committee members? Deputy Mayor Jaworski.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Warden, certainly I echo all your positive comments about this project going forward. I have a question, and perhaps it was already touched on at the informal info session last week, but I was hoping, since this was one of the questions out there in the public, if you could speak to access to the site in terms of traffic, the streets, what kind of traffic increase could be seen and how folks will access the LTC. Thank you.
Ben, I can answer it, or if you'd like to.
Yeah, I think either I can jump in on this. So,
okay, sure.
So the parcel of land that we've secured is right at the top or the end of where Broad and Wood Street are. And in speaking with Ms. Haley through a pre-consultation, the discussion on how traffic will move in the community, the thinking is to basically provide a connection between Broad and Wood so that vehicles can actually pass down Broad and then come back down Wood or vice versa. So we think that that's the best for vehicular traffic, as well as for any municipal snow clearing equipment. It will give them the opportunity to be able to turn around as opposed to hitting a dead end. When it comes to other pedestrian circulation points, we are going to be connecting to the municipal park that's to the north as well. We're proposing at least a connection there. And so we think that will will help with the efficiency of traffic moving. When it comes to the amount of traffic, we're still quite early on in some of our reports that will be supplemented for the site plan approval process. But when it comes to visitors and staff, typically a facility this size, we would have total staff would be about 130% of the bed count. So give or take about 160 to 170 staff members. Now, at any given time, our peak staffing is during the day. And so 60% of those staff would be working. And so we would be around, and I'm just going to do some quick math here, about 100 staff during the day shift. So there will be vehicular traffic moving through. We've got ample parking for both staff and visitors. And that we don't anticipate any other negative effects from that circulation. And I believe Ms. Haley had mentioned that, I believe it was Broad Street, that there are some improvements that will be happening, perhaps in concurrence with our project that we're proposing. But perhaps we'll let Ms. Haley maybe speak to that as well.
Sure, thank you. So without getting into a lot of details, I understand it's the intention of our General Manager of Infrastructure Services to work closely with the Roads Committee to make sure that any improvements to Broadwood and Thomas Street would be done simultaneously so that they're not conflicting with one another, and that we would end up with a nicer finished product in terms of any infrastructure or street improvements in that location.
So if I could supplemental, just so I'm clear, there's not any proposal in sort of changing the directions of those streets or making anything one way. It's sort of, they'll stay as such. Okay, thank you.
Both two-way.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions of the committee? Seeing none, I guess that's it for this evening. I'll just go to the public. I believe there's one person from the public on. Does anybody from the public want to speak or ask a question? I'm going to assume that that's not the case. So move for adjournment. Moved by Councillor McDowell, second by Councillor Luck. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you all for attending this public meeting, and we look forward to seeing the developments coming in the future.